Approximately 5 years ago from the time of this video's upload, I made my first general fighting game focused video, Top 10 Fighting Game Protagonists. I made that video before I started covering fighting games more regularly, so I wasn't as studied up on all the games out there and all the detailed backstories. 5 years later, I want to revisit this topic, updating my thoughts on characters from the original list and spotlighting some protagonists I snubbed the first time around. I will go over the protagonists I feel embody fighting game main characters the best, both story-wise and gameplay-wise. A great protagonist in a fighting game helps you understand the mechanics of the game easily, and learn the main story as you fight up the arcade ladder and reach that nefarious final boss to see how the story ends. Essentially, these characters usually have a big beef with the final boss and are easy to pick up for beginners, but also give veteran players the perfect jack-of-all-trades characters that can make them deadly in tournament. So considering all that, let's revisit my top 10 fighting game protagonists. Number 10. Akira Yuki from Virtua Fighter. Virtua Fighter never focuses on the story, so Akira really doesn't have a personality, but something about him makes him appealing. He follows the dress code of many other high-profile fighting game martial artists, with gi and no shoes. And his fighting style accustoms you to the Virtua Fighter mechanics easily, with simple punches and kicks that combo nicely into each other. He's the purest form of a jack-of-all-trades martial artist that you'd find in real life. He has no weird gimmicks or reality-breaking balls of energy that he fires from his fists, it's just old-fashioned kung fu, and I respect him for showing no nonsense when following his passion. I guess what makes him the most interesting to me is when he appears outside of Virtua Fighter. His Dead or Alive appearance was fitting, and his apathetic demeanor in Sega Racing felt like some great visual comedy on his dry personality, but my favorite Akira might just be his assist trophy appearance in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Look at him, it's cool seeing him in a game that breaks his stoic realism and takes his style back to 1993, right down to his DNA. Number 9. Kasumi from Dead or Alive. Kasumi is a trained ninja who is a steady favorite to win the titular Dead or Alive tournament, and constantly leads missions to take down any villains the series throws at her. She has a direct beef with the original villain Raidou, I hope I pronounced his name correctly, who's her uncle that injured her brother to a point where he couldn't fight, don't worry he got better later, causing Kasumi to have to take the lead as heir of her ninja clan. But Kasumi wanted revenge for her brother, so she entered the first Dead or Alive tournament since Raidou was there copying the moves of other fighters. It just so happened that he was the last opponent, and Kasumi accidentally won the tournament since she needed to defeat him for her family's honor. Of course, the cash prize wasn't a bad perk either. In every game afterwards, she appeared to take on whatever other threat was around, either because it was her duty to investigate or it involved characters that she met in the last tournament and she gets roped in. That being said, no one wants to help her in the story of Dead or Alive 5. She just wants to know where Alpha 152 is, and everyone else is like, yeah, no you can't. Not only is Kasumi balanced in the sense of her moveset, but also her personality. She's so polite and caring. Most other characters in this series are hell-bent on fighting and even a bit arrogant. But Kasumi is one of the few that only gets gruff if she has to. She'd rather just sit down and talk over a nice strawberry French pastry that I can't pronounce. Good sign of a leader there, only fight if other methods don't work. Of course, since she's in a fighting game, the fuse for fighting being unavoidable burns up pretty quickly. Thanks for trying, Kasumi.
I can't avoid this fight.
Number 8. Morgan from Darkstalkers. I'm not sure if Darkstalkers ever officially declared their main character, but it's pretty clear Morgan has become the de facto main character with how much her shenanigans have become the focal point of the series' existence. Dimitri was allegedly supposed to be the protagonist, but Morgan power crept her way into becoming the series' number 1. It's kinda like how Steve Urkel eventually became the main character of Family Matters based on how much audiences loved his antics over anything else the main family cast did. She just kept appearing in all the crossovers, so she's the character keeping Darkstalkers alive in the minds of the consumer.
Is that all you got?
I've gone over how great the other lead character Dimitri is in previous videos, but I think Morgan's appeal and story makes her a fun number 1 protagonist. While Dimitri the vampire is fighting to claim the throne, Morgan the succubus is there to protect it since she inherited it. Yet her main goal is to sneak out and have some fun, which mostly involves beating up a bunch of dudes and defeating something evil since their strength is quite enjoyable to toy with. It's almost like a twisted version of the Wandering Warrior fighting the final boss because it's just a good fight. She's definitely not evil, but she's not the moral compass that we should be following. She still steals part of your soul using seduction regardless of your allegiance. However, Morgan's on the side of good with some moral dilemmas, specifically when the world is in danger when those pesky Marvel characters cross over with her universe, but it's still saving the world at the end of the day, so I'll take what I can get.
Does it feel? Level 4!
As for her moveset, it's good for a main character, being a perversion of the Shoto moveset with soul fists and shadow blades being your standard fireballs and anti-airs. And like all Darkstalker's characters, her body morphing is top-notch, with spikes and leg drills alike. It's clear that Dimitri has the more traditional Shoto-style moveset for his role, but Morgan's allure was just too strong for Capcom to let the succubus and vampire share the same stage. Number 7. Siegfried from Soul Calibur. Before Soul Calibur 5, the series never had a clear de facto protagonist on the roster. Of the best candidates, Sophidia was the second closest, who's on a mission for the Greek gods to cleanse evil in this world, all starting with Soul Edge. Then her children went on to become the main characters, which bolsters that point. Still, she's just off to the side of the main story, like the A- plotline. Mitsurugi and Taki also have great weight in the series, but Mitsurugi is more of a lone wolf, and Taki is more like a commando that would come to assist the main group. Then you have Keelik and his group who are after Soul Edge, but they also felt like they were just below Siegfried in terms of involvement with Soul Edge. Siegfried is the noble knight that has the closest relationship with this wicked sword that everyone's after. He starts his journey by teaming up with Sophidia and Taki to defeat Soul Edge's wielder Cervantes in the first game, but he ends up being the one possessed by the sword after the battle. This leads him on a mission to devour enough souls to resurrect the series' main villain, Nightmare, who initially uses Siegfried's body as a vessel. Siegfried essentially switched from main hero to main villain, but then he spent the rest of his series pursuing the resurrected Nightmare once he rid Soul Edge from his body. After Nightmare made him commit so many evil actions, no doubt Siegfried has the most personal beef with Soul Edge. His story wrapped up nicely in Soul Calibur 4, with him wielding Soul Calibur, the Sword of Purity, to definitively defeat Nightmare and the wicked Soul Edge.
You win! Forgive me.
Then the franchise rebooted, and I have no idea where anything's going now. His moveset isn't quite the beginner moveset we see with other protagonists. Siegfried is slower than your average well-rounded character, so someone like Mitsurugi or Sophidia would be a better option for beginners. Still, I feel Siegfried's mechanics are easier to understand than other stance-switching characters in the series. Regardless of his playstyle, his redemption arc ultimately cemented his role as protagonist in Soul Calibur.
You win! Die without fulfilling my duty.
Number 6. Kyo Kusanagi from King of Fighters. Kyo was the main focus of SNK's fighting game universe once King of Fighters combined their various fighting game franchises. I definitely see Kyo's appeal, being the rebellious teenager who plays by no one's rules and is cocky on the battlefield. Yet inside, he has the attributes of a budding family man. He was the edge we needed for the 90s. Not my type of character, but I respect him. Initially, he was just entering the King of Fighters tournament to prove his strength. However, as the story unfolded, we learned Kyo's rival Ayori was part of a clan that was bitter rivals with Kyo's family in the past. Long story short, Ayori's family made a pact with the evil Orochi, enhancing their power to demonic levels and creating the rivalry. In present day, that led to main villain Gonitz kidnapping Kyo's girlfriend to revive Orochi, Kyo jumping in to save her, Ayori being overwhelmed by Orochi's bloodline inside of him, and Kyo having to save save the world, his girlfriend, and his rival in one last fierce battle. It all ends with Kyo sacrificing himself and dying, until SNK realize that the fans love Kyo, so he sticks around in every game now, being a big part of all the major conflicts. The next story arc starred Kyo's sorta clone K-Dash, but Kyo walked in and said, "Mind if I take some of that spotlight? The fans love my jacket and moveset that makes me easy to pick up." Speaking of, he has a lot of jack-of-all-trades attacks, utilizing literal fireballs and good ranged martial arts moves, adding style with some pyrokinesis to flare up many of his basic attacks, making him cool and hot at the same time. Yes, I know that was a lame joke. Number 5. Soul Bad Guy from Guilty Gear. Don't be fooled by his last name. He's actually a respectable fellow. It's like how Greenland's Icy and Iceland's Greeny. Names in reality don't always match up. His last name was given to him by the authorities since Soul's mission involved destroying all plants that manufactured gears so they could not be used as tools of war anymore. Yet blowing up factories is kind of illegal, so he was still looked at as a bad guy despite his noble motives. Gears are biological weapons that use living beings as technologically altered, mind-controlled killing machines. Soul both sympathizes with them and hates their purpose, since he was one of the first humans experimented on to become a gear, so he knows how evil this gear project is and why it must be stopped. He suppresses the gear in his DNA from taking over with his scientifically designed headband that allows him to retain his human form. You thought that was just a normal headband that makes him look cool and edgy? Think again. While his mission is to eradicate the gear experimentation and any existing gears, he still values life. If he detects humanity or harmlessness in any gears, he'll spare them, like Dizzy. Who's she gonna harm? She's adorable. Besides his hatred of the Gear Initiative in general, the original Gear final boss Justice was created using his deceased lover's DNA. Right after Soul dealt the finishing blow in their fight, she gained awareness of her past, revealing herself to Soul and motivating him to exterminate the mastermind behind all the gears. His moveset relies on basic yet hard-hitting attacks that are perfect for all situations, like any good protagonist would have. He's got your lows, he's got your highs, he's got your special moves that put pressure on those darn blocking opponents. And of course, he adds fire to his special attacks. He isn't the first protagonist to do that on this list, and he certainly isn't the last one. Oh, and he has Devil Trigger. Cool. Number 4. Liu Kang from Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat has always had a bit of an identity crisis with their main character situation. Liu Kang was declared the chosen one to defeat Outworld and any other villains in the first 4 games, and then again when the series rebooted in Mortal Kombat 9. He ultimately was considered the protagonist because he had the Shaolin monk power that could defeat any evil that invaded Earthrealm, yet the creators always used Scorpion and Sub-Zero as the poster children even though their plotlines were rarely the main story. Those stories were still important to the main lore of the series, but Liu Kang taking down Shang Tsung, Shao Kahn, and Shinnok were always the end goal. Liu Kang can even transform into the series dragon logo, which further signifies how much he represents Mortal Kombat as a brand.
Liu Kang wins. Fatality.
However, I feel the creators wanted something greater for Liu Kang and couldn't trust him to carry the franchise on his image alone. He never got main game cover duty or was heavily used in promotions, and his initial personality came off as somewhat bland. It contributed to the developers' decision to kill off Liu Kang in the 5th main series game and give the likes of Kung Lao and Johnny Cage the chance to lead the pack. Then when Mortal Kombat 9 rebooted the story and Liu Kang started to distrust Raiden, leading to his unintentional death, he joined the villain side, ending his time as Defender of Earthrealm. Him being a Revenant actually made him an interesting foe with a bit of sarcasm.
This is not your destiny, Liu Kang.
More visions, Raiden? Do you still see the future?
What made Liu Kang the most interesting to me were all the things he did when fighting. He turns into the aforementioned dragon, shoots hot dragon fire, drops an arcade cabinet of the original Mortal Kombat on you. What is this man?
Liu Kang wins. Flawless victory. Fatality.
But the aspect holding his character in high regards is his Bruce Lee influence. His original design was straight up Bruce Lee, with a flying kick in his moveset to drill in the reference. You can't go wrong with making Bruce Lee your main character. His high-pitched noises that he makes when fighting, which are a necessity for any Liu Kang iteration, are another clear reference to Bruce Lee.
You
And then you have his bicycle kick, which is really just there for physics-defying fun. In an interview with Mortal Kombat co-creator Ed Boon, he stated that they designed Liu Kang to be the character your parents could just pick up and play without any knowledge of the game or video games in general. He was meant to be simple in terms of moves, yet effective, and that idea carried over into future games, as modern Liu Kang has some long combos that are made up with non-complex attack inputs. But don't let that undermine the tact and skill that comes with mastering the savior of Earthrealm.
Liu Kang wins.
Number 3. Kazuya Mishima from Tekken. Tekken has a rotating door of protagonists, and they all relate back to the Mishima family. Kazuya had a roller coaster of allegiances throughout the Tekken series, which all started with him being the main good character in the first Tekken game. In Tekken 2, he was overcome by the Devil Gene and became the main villain, with Tekken 1 boss Heihachi swapping roles with Kazuya. And then afterwards, Kazuya was generally part of a sort of villain, sort of anti-hero faction, which shows off how dire some of these villainous threats became in later games. I like that his start as protagonist evolved where even though he's not the nicest guy, he still had a conflict with the main antagonist that made his brand of evil not as bad, except in Tekken 2. His main motivation was initially getting revenge on his father Heihachi for throwing him off a cliff as a kid, and Heihachi just so happened to be the main villain in Tekken 1. And then Kazuya was all about getting that sweet demonic power he craved so much. Once Tekken 3 hit, Kazuya's son Jin had the most games as the main character and the main goal of destroying everything involving the Devil Gene, which afflicted him, so Kazuya sought to kill his son to obtain that power. When Jin had a more villainous role in Tekken 6, Kazuya could come out looking like a hero again since he loves destroying his son. Looking like a trustworthy fellow while doing it was just a bonus. Then Tekken 7 made Kazuya a protagonist again, depending upon your outlook, and he came out looking like somewhat of a good guy. His conflict with Heihachi in this game stemmed from Heihachi killing his wife and Kazuya's mother when Kazuya was just a kid. Then Kazuya does all that devil transformation stuff, and I take back the term good guy when describing him. Even though Jin had a more pure motive throughout the series, I always enjoyed Kazuya's wildcard role after he started off as a standard protagonist. His moveset remained perfect for a protagonist too, utilizing simple attacks that target both low and high, making him a staple of Tekken's tournament high-tier characters.
KO. You win.
Number 2. Terry Bogard from Fatal Fury. Terry makes you want to play him beyond his playstyle. He looks like a 90s cool guy with a jacket, Converse sneakers, and baseball cap that transcends reality and has the name of his game written on it. He also had long flowing blonde hair, which was a big style in the 90s, must have been a fan of Nelson. Terry earned his main character status by having the most direct vengeance motive with Geese Howard, the original main villain of Fatal Fury. Geese killed Terry's adoptive father, so now Terry needs to defeat him when Geese organizes his own tournament, because life is convenient. Then Geese's half-brother Krauser organizes a tournament of his own in a later Fatal Fury game, because revenge is fun for the whole family. Terry goes on to mentor Geese's son Rock in Mark of the Wolves, which is a nice way to develop his character and do something noble for the son of the main enemy that Terry killed. But death is never definite in this universe, so Geese of course comes back. Terry may have a basic moveset in terms of mechanics, but he has a lot of flair to it. Even though Terry has the appearance of a purely physical street brawler, he can control energy by punching the ground to create an energy geyser, or just emit energy or flames from his fists. Or maybe he's just so strong that his strength cannot be contained in a human body. Otherwise, he has moves that combine boxing, karate, kickboxing, box kicking, kicking and screaming, screaming cowboy, cowboy Ken, Ken Jennings, and kung fu. And now here's where I list every non-crossover, non-licensed fighting game I can think of that did not have a rep on this list and rapid fire their protagonists. protagonists. Batsu from Rival Schools, Ragna the Blood Edge from Blaze Blue, Haomaru from Samurai Showdown, Kaede from The Last Blade, Ryo Sakazaki from Art of Fighting, Jago from Killer Instinct, Heart Aino from Arcana Heart, Hyde from Under Night in Birth, Ray McDougal from Fighter's History, Jin Sao Tome from Cyberbot, Sion from Melty Blood, Edward Falcon from Power Stone, Bad Mr. Frosty from Clay Fighter, Spring Man from ARMS, Philia from Skullgirls, I suppose, that's uncertain. Bonus round. Now for every other protagonist candidate from franchises I already discussed. Dimitri from Darkstalkers, Keelix Ophidia and Patroklos from Soul Calibur, K-Ash Crimson and this guy with the hard to pronounce name from King of Fighters, Scene Kisuke from Guilty Gear, Scorpion Sub-Zero, Johnny Cage, Raiden and Cassie Cage from Mortal Kombat, Jin Kazama, Heihachi and Lars from Tekken, Andy Bogard from Fatal Fury, Noel and Jean from Blaze Blue, Shizumaru from Samurai Showdown, Robert Garcia from Art of Fighting, Black Orchid from Killer Instinct, and probably someone else from Skullgirls. Oh, and Alex from Street Fighter. Wait, have I discussed Street Fighter yet? Okay, the first time I tackled this topic, I tried to be a hipster and not go with the expected choice, but this time I said screw it and went with the anticlimactic character we all expected. You know who it is, I know who it is, number 1, Ryu from Street Fighter. With Street Fighter being the landmark fighting game series, Ryu is the landmark protagonist. He's definitely not as interesting in the story compared to other characters, but that's not his point. He's the strong-willed warrior that wants to be the best like no one ever was. So when a martial arts tournament takes place, Ryu will find it. And he will win, no matter who the final opponent is and what crazy world domination scheme he has.
Power alone will never defeat you.
With how iconic Street Fighter 2 is, we have to remember that Street Fighter 1 starts off the series plot. It's just the story of a man from Japan who wants to win a tournament set up by the Muay Thai king Sagat. No ulterior motives, Sagat just wanted to prove he was the strongest fighter in the world with a fair and square tournament. And then Ryu continues his journey for the rest of the series, alternating between being that serious fighter who's just kinda there unrelated to the plot of the main villain, or being the primary target dragged into the final battle. Originally in Street Fighter 2, he defeats Bison and is all, well, I just did that, now time to find another tournament. In his Street Fighter 3 ending, he'll wander to Oakland and talk about how he'll keep fighting, and then in the Street Fighter 5 story, he mostly just keeps to himself until the plot decides it would be best to have him beat Bison, even though Nash worked the hardest up till this point. That being said, Ryu has had major plot motivation when defeating his inner demons of the Satsui Ino Hado, which tries to take over his mind and body to become psychotic and murderous with his fighting power. Bison wanted to harness that power in the story of Street Fighter Alpha, which retroactively made it an unseen part of Street Fighter 2, and Seth wanted to provoke that power for SIN in Street Fighter 4. Then whenever Akuma comes into the story to tempt Ryu with the power of the Satsui Ino Hado after Akuma himself embraced it, you get more of that internal struggle. Despite Ryu's inconsistent role in the big story, he is necessary as a protagonist for his moveset and legacy.
You win!
His moveset has the basic attacks that anyone can utilize and the special moves that give you something for all scenarios. The Hadouken is a great projectile that can vary in speed and give you options from full screen. The Shoryuken is a great anti-air for those jumpy opponents and works as a wake-up option for those unsuspecting foes. And then there's the Tatsumaki Senpukyak, which is just a great special move that I cannot see Street Fighter without and took me years to pronounce somewhat correctly. This moveset is not only the base for other Street Fighter characters, but many other starter characters in fighting games. The model of a character fighting with a projectile, anti-air, and forward-flinging special move is a staple of the genre now. Even though Ryu is just a stoic martial arts guy in standard gi, he has enough unique aspects to his look to make him interesting in a sea of other video game icons. He's the original fighting game protagonist after all, so if anyone has earned that right to just wear something so generic, it would be Ryu, the top fighting game protagonist. So, what did you think on this second go-around? Agree? Disagree? Are all these characters great for newcomers and longtime fans of these series alike, or were there a few protagonists that got snubbed? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video.